Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast, where we are continuing to discuss the Affidavit of Probable Cause concerning the catastrophic events that occurred at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, on November 13th, 2022. The previous 17 episodes of this special series retraced what we did when we started our podcast. The first 18 episodes of the podcast went through this very same PCA page by page. We have now, with the benefit of almost 3 years passage of time, the knowledge of what occurred during the court case styled as Idaho versus Kohberger, and with the benefit of some information that had been under seal during the entire time that this case was active until the time after Mr. Kohberger pled guilty to the 5 very serious charges that were brought against him, that he was supposed to stand trial on commencing in August of 2025, a trial that was canceled when he pled guilty, as he did in open court on July 2nd, 2025. We're going to go back in time again here as we look at the very last page, page number 18 of the Affidavit of Probable Cause. It begins with Detective Payne writing, additional analysis of records for the 8458 phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to Johnson, Idaho. The 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time that the unalivings occurred. Next paragraph. On December 27th, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28th, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Based on the above information, I am requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Bryan C. Kohberger, date of birth, and it provides his date of birth here, for burglary at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho, and 4 counts of unaliving in the first degree for the unalivings of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. I declare under penalty of perjury pursuant to the law of the state of Idaho that the foregoing is true and correct. And then handwritten is the date 12/29/2022. And under affiant, there's a signature that appears to be that of Detective Brett Payne, number 157. And that concludes the Affidavit of Probable Cause. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could provide some opinions, some speculation, some commentary here, rhetorical questions completely under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. We had pointed out what appeared to be certain errors in this document. Here we see another in terms of the address. The residence that the public was made aware was 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Yet here, just above Detective Payne's statement, he's declaring under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. He lists the address at 1122 King Street, not King Road, in Moscow, Idaho. Secondly, the reason why he's going from describing the travels of this phone on November 13th, 2022, the day of the crimes, now jumping forward to December 27th, 2022, and addressing that Pennsylvania agents recovered trash. It's because on December 27th, 2022, Mr. Kohberger was with his family. It was during the break in the school schedule at Washington State University, the holiday break. He had been in Pennsylvania since approximately mid-December. So here we see Pennsylvania agents recovered trash from the Kohberger family residence on December 27th. And that this evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab across the country for testing. As you will learn as you go through the documents from the case, if you haven't already done so, the Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian is who Moscow Police Department sent certain evidence for forensic testing. And here we see, according to Detective Payne, that certain trash was recovered on December 27th, 2022, sent across the country, tested, and then December 29th, 2022 is when the Affidavit of Probable Cause was signed. And you will learn, if you've read, for example, Detective Brett Payne's report that was released after the case was closed, as it was back in July, that Detective Payne was in Pennsylvania the early morning hours of December 30th, 2022, was watching the arrest happen on some type of a device. He was not present on scene at the time of Mr. Kohberger's arrest. But what had happened is, subsequent to that arrest, Mr. Kohberger was not taken to the Monroe County, Pennsylvania jail. There was a stop at a Pennsylvania State Police barracks, and there he met with Detective Payne and another detective from the Idaho State Police who interviewed Mr. Kohberger. The interview, we understand, was recorded in two forms. One, it was recorded at the barracks. And second, the detective from the Idaho State Police also voice recorded that interview. Neither of those items have been released to the public as of today, as well as the vast preponderance of items that were under seal at the time that this case progressed from December 29th, 2022 through its closure of July 23rd, 2025. The judicial officer was supposed to be the presiding judge over the trial, and that is Judge Stephen J. Hippler, has only released a small number of documents that were under seal to the public from the months of April through July of 2025. That's all. This case still largely remains under seal as of today. Better part of a half year since Mr. Kohberger pled guilty. Finally, without this PCA, there would not have been an arrest warrant that was issued on December 29th, 2022. The arrest warrant was based on this PCA. So I do invite you, as I always do, to read the documents for yourself, to go back and to read this PCA in its entirety and come to your own conclusions as to whether or not you feel that, based on this document, if there was sufficient grounds to issue that arrest warrant, bearing in mind that the judicial officer who issued the arrest warrant was not looking at any of the evidence. Judge Marshall was only looking at this PCA and relying on it, signed under penalty of perjury pursuant to the law of the state of Idaho, that the foregoing is true and correct by Detective Payne to issue that warrant. This will now conclude episode number 18 and our special series looking back at the PCA 3 years later. My name is Kathy. Thank you for joining us here today.